I got that from Travis Grantham yesterday. And good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our weekly caucus. And shall we jump right in? Everyone's good? All right. Let's start with appropriations. Let's see.
Madam Whip.
Yes.
Madam Whip, members, I'm Tim Grubbs, Appropriations Research Analyst. House Bill 2660.
All right, you guys. We have to put you on naughty spot. Sorry. Excuse our member.
House
Called
Bill,
timeout. Where's Udo?
House Bill 2666.
Yes, sir.
House Bill
2666.
2666 appropriates $81 million from the general fund in FY 2021 for the retirement or defeasance of the 2016 financing agreement for Department of Corrections facility. The bill is on a third read consent calendar. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh, would you like to speak to this? Ms. Cobb's not here.
Madam Chair, if you could hold that, my book is in the process of being delivered.
Okay, Mr. Peterson.
I've got a little bit of information on it. So, members, this is a payoff of about $80 million worth of debt. A part of our majority plan, trying to pay down debt. Consequently, it opens up $17 million a year of ongoing spending as part of it. I think it's a good fiscal move here for us to do, and so I support House Bill 2666.
Okay, any questions? All right, next is Committee on Commerce, 2144.
Madam Whip, members, my name is Michael Laird. I am an intern analyst for the Commerce Committee. House Bill 2144 requires one member of the State Liquor Board who is not financially interested in any business licensed to deal with spirituous liquors to be appointed after an association representing cities and towns forwards 3 nominees who must be either current or former elected municipal officials to the governor. Madam Whip, the bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Grantham, would you like to speak to this?
I can if needed. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward State Liquor Board bill that staff did a great job explaining.
Okay.
Mr. Wettinger obviously is the expert on the subject, but it went through committee just fine.
Oh, Mr. Kern, my apologies.
I'm letting you talk.
Did he do good?
No, he's right there.
Okay, Mr. Kern.
It just adds doesn't add. So it does not add to the current 7-member board. It just, we're asking that one of the members be represented by cities.
Okay, any questions, members?
Good job.
Oh, I do.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Ms. Bullock.
Is this the same bill as last year?
Yes. Passed unanimously out of the House and Senate.
And what happened to it last year?
We had a debacle, I think.
Okay. No, I thought it was the same bill as last year.
It was same bill.
Thank you. All right, next we have 2363.
Madam Whip members, Paul Bainey, I'm the analyst for the Commerce Committee. Madam Whip and members, current law defines a home solicitation sale as a sale in which the seller solicits the sale at a home other than that of the solicitor, and all or any part of the purchase price is payable in installments, or a debt incurred for payment of the purchase price is also payable in installments. House Bill 2363 removes language referring to the purchase price being payable in installments. This bill is on the third read consent calendar. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Grantham, would you like to talk to this?
Is Mr. Toma not?
I do not see Mr. Toma.
I don't need to speak unless somebody has a
Okay.
specific.
Any questions, anyone? All right, 2645.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2645 asserts that the Federal Home Loan Bank cannot be stayed, enjoined, or prohibited from exercising or enforcing any right against collateral pledged by a member under any Federal Home Loan Bank security agreement in which the bank is a party. Further, prohibits a receiver or conservator from voiding any transfer of money in connection with any Federal Home Loan Bank security agreement with an insured member unless the transfer is made with actual intent to hinder, delay, or defraud either existing or future creditors. This bill is on the third read consent calendar. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, education, 2013.
Madam Whip members, Chase Hauser, analyst for the Education Committee. House Bill 2013 requires school district governing boards to adopt policies and procedures that stipulate teachers must retain a student in a common school course if the student does not meet the criteria for promotion prescribed by the governing board, or fail a student in a high school course if the student does not meet competency requirements prescribed by the governing board. The bill allows the teacher to promote or pass a student only if the student receives a special exception that the governing board prescribes. The Committee on Education adopted an amendment that allows a teacher to promote or pass a student who does not meet their criteria for promotion or competency requirements if the student is an English learner or limited English proficient student, and if the student's teacher and guardian agree that promotion is appropriate, or if the student is in the process of a special education referral, has significant reading impairment, or is disabled, and the student's individual education program team and guardian agree that promotion is appropriate. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Fillmore, would you like to talk to this?
This bill is a great bill, move on.
Microphone, yours is.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a great bill, move on. No.
Any question?
This bill effectively, and there was a lot of discussion with this, and I know that there is some that have grave concerns. I'm trying to end social promotions. If the kid is not ready to understand the standards, don't promote them and move them out.
Okay, Mr. Carroll?
Is this one of these Fillmore bills that never sees the day of light?
There's a lot of them.
It's seeing a lot of light right now. Mr. Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Whip. I'm more interested in the exception. I understand we don't want to socially promote, but then we have the exception, and that's what I don't understand. Why would you promote a person who doesn't have command of English? That's how I'm understanding that.
In the
Mr.
education
Fillmore?
department, Mr. Campbell, nothing is black and white. Welcome to the real world. There has to be some exceptions for various reasons. On a kid that's borderline or anything of that nature.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Madam Whip. This may be directed at staff or Mr. Fillmore, but I would like to see after the votes here, I would like to hear a little bit of the testimony that was in opposition of the bill.
Okay. Mr. Allen? Did you have a question?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to hear it now, or were you
Yeah, I
talking
would-
about
if
one?
staff.
My apologies,
Yeah,
my apologies.
I mean, if we look at the votes, Madam Whip, and then who voted for it and against it, I think this might be a party line vote, but I would just like to hear a little bit about what opposition was the bill and reason.
Madam Whip, Representative Cook, in committee, when members explained their vote, there was indication that there was concern that this bill is short-sighted, and it's based off of individual personal business. Furthermore, members indicated that they had discussed with superintendents who were unanimous in believing that this tied the hands of teachers and the hands of the school boards.
Okay, Madam Whip, staff, elaborate a little bit on what you just said about something about business.
Madam Whip, Representative Cook, when explaining, Representative Holding indicated that it's an individual personal business. It didn't elaborate as to what personal business exactly meant.
Okay, thank you. I'll just ask the representative myself. Thank you.
Any other, Mr. Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Did the issue of what percentage of students will be left back come up at all by anyone? Because, I mean, if you look at the reading and math scores, especially in some schools, I mean, is it potentially possible that a quarter to a half of the students will get left back? And
Mr. Fillmore?
Theoretically, that could happen, Mr. Kavanaugh. Do we want to promote the kids that are not ready just to be nice?
no, not at all. I just want to be able to alert the school facilities board to ramp up construction.
Ms. Udall?
Thanks, Madam Webb. Members, I agree with the spirit of this bill that we need to be holding kids back if they're not ready to move forward. I think that when we allow them to continue moving forward, we're setting them up for failure. I think that there are a few things in this bill that need some work, and that came up in committee. who decides what that level is that is passing versus not passing? Is that an individual teacher decision? Is that a school board decision? What assessments can be used? Are there different forms of assessment? If the student then does summer school, can they catch up and move on? I mean, there are a lot of details that are lacking in this bill at this point that need to come together for this to be successful. But as I said, I support the spirit of the bill. I think it needs some work moving forward.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, I'd like to know, what kind of ideas you have to make this thing work. I find this to be nonsensical in a sense. Well, we're not going to promote them if they're not ready, but then we're going to have exceptions to the rule. So this was a party line vote, right?
Looks that way, yep. Yes.
So, but Representative Udall, you supported the bill and all the Republicans supported it along with you. And I just have problems with that. I mean, I'd like to have a little more discussion from other members, but this is an important bill.
Ms. Udall, did you say, are you working on this with Mr. Fillmore?
Madam Webb, members, I encouraged him to continue working. I'm happy to work with him on it. But I think there's some details that need worked out. I think, as I said, I do think that social promotion is a problem and that needs to be solved. I just don't know that the details are there at this point. I think that there are some details that are messed up or missing at this point in the bill.
Madam Whip, I'll pull the bill.
Fully agree
Madam-
with the
We'll discuss
concept.
it.
Madam Whip, to that
Who is
point,
that? Oh, Mr. Fincham.
thank you. Very little that we do here is perfect. So I think it's, I know, hard to believe, but I think that Mr. Fillmore is going down the right path with this. And I would urge him not to pull the bill. If there are amendments that need to come forward to fine tune it, then bring them forward. Otherwise, we at least set the standard in the ground and say, okay, this is our standard. This is what we're going to do moving forward.
Okay.
That in and of itself will drive a different behavior.
So, Mr. Fillmore, you're willing to work with members and Ms.
Oh,
Udall?
Madam Whip, I'm always willing to meet with and work with members. I just need clarification on, it's hard to imagine that I'm going down the right track. That I just heard from Mr. Fincham. We'll discuss that later.
So Mr. Fillmore will be coming around talking to members, and I'll help him with that if you need to get a hold of me or Ms. Udall. So, thank you. All right, moving on to 2015.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2015 requires the school district governing board to approve all supplemental books, instructional computer software, and teaching aids before use in a common school or high school course that includes a basic textbook and supplemental books. The Committee on Education adopted an amendment that states if a public school is required to secure the permission of a student's parent before the student may participate in certain curriculum, course of study, or use certain materials, the public school must notify the parent on a written permission form that the parent may review the curriculum, course of study, or materials, and where and at what time the parent may do so. The adopted amendment also outlines the actions a student or student's parent must take before initiating legal action to enforce the written permission form requirement. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Fillmore, do you want to?
Madam Whip, the intent of this bill is to not allow a wayward teacher to introduce something without it going before the board and getting prior approval. Some of the language in this, such as the portion that the parents have the opportunity to take it home, and that is just a precursor to the fact that, say, with sex education or things of that, they need the time to develop that. Representative Blanc turned it into a sex ed bill, which it is not. All I'm saying is that prior to a teacher introducing a portion of what she's going to be teaching to the kids, that she has to submit it to the board.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you. 2108.
Madam Whip, members, Emily Bonner, Assistant Research Analyst for Ways and Means and Education Committees. House Bill 2108 stipulates that high school freshmen and sophomores must be admitted to a community college for dual enrollment. This bill also requires the school district governing board to award one Carnegie unit for each 3 semester hours of credit that a student earns in a community college or university course. This bill is also on the third read consent calendar. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Udall?
Thanks, Madam Whip members. We're addressing 2 issues here. One is that currently there's a cap on how many or what percent of students in dual enrollment can be freshmen or sophomores. So dual enrollment is when a student takes a college class on their high school campus, and it's taught according to the college standards. Right now, there's no more than 25% of dual enrollments can be freshman or sophomore. That's kind of an arbitrary number, and it's reducing the number of people that can take dual enrollment. And we want to encourage dual enrollment, so we'd like to lift that cap. The other thing is making sure that the credit that you get, the high school credit that you get for the college class matches the material that's covered. So a semester of a college class is usually the equivalent of a year of high school class. So a 3 credit hour course in the college or dual enrollment class should be a 1 year high school credit, and that aligns that correctly.
Okay, Mr. Allen?
Thank you. And members, when we put the 25% in, just so you know, unless you already know, we wanted to make sure that those credits were fresh to you as you moved into your career or whatever you were doing. So we were trying to eliminate the ability to take classes that don't apply for several years. That was the reason we did it. If that's not serving a purpose anymore, that's fine. But that was the genesis behind that decision. I think it was in 2006 that we did that. So, you know, is this necessary? Well, I don't know. If a kid's taking economic classes or math classes that apply to college credit long before they'll ever use them, I'm not sure that that's still not an appropriate stopgap to put it towards when you're going towards your career. But I'm not on the education committee, don't want to be. And so I probably will vote for this, but that was the original concern.
Okay, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Just want to say that every high school student should have as many opportunities as they can for dual enrollment. My kids have been able to participate in it. We try to do every possible class they can. It's a really great opportunity for them to get ahead. And this adjustment for the credit is huge because before you had kids that were doing dual enrollment, but there was a disincentive because they did not give you a full credit for the class. You were only getting a half a credit. So I think this is a really, really good bill. And some of these decisions, I think, you know, Mr. Allen brings up some good points, but those are probably decisions that could be made by the parents and the students as to their future and how those classes will be used. But I support this bill. I think it's a really good bill.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Madam Whip. Did any discussion come up over the financing? Because there was some question about the state double paying at one time. I'm going back years when we had this discussion before where, so there's no, so the student, who's paying the community college? It's a high school teacher teaching the course. So is the community college getting any money for this, or is this just a matter of the high school teacher teaching the course as part of that teacher's regular load and the student getting credit?
Madam Whip, Mr. Kavanaugh, it's a combination. So it depends on the community college districts. Some of them offer it for free from the community colleges, and some of them charge the student usually. Some districts will pay part of that. The community colleges then, with the tuition that's paid, it's split between the high school and the community college because the high school is providing the teacher and the textbooks, and then the community college is providing some oversight. So there are a lot of different models. We've actually been looking into that, but it's a separate issue.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Whip,
Thank you.
just
Mr. Peterson?
real quick. So in our case, we've just enrolled them in the community colleges and we pay the regular tuition rate. And then I guess there is some kind of split arranged with the schools. But as far as payment goes, the parents pay directly just the same tuition rate to the college in a lot of cases.
Thank you. Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Madam Whip and members. I would like to speak a little bit about this bill that I support, and I'll give you the reasoning why. My son David, who's 20 years old, went to the same district public school that I graduated from. When he was a senior in high school, Grand Canyon University offered Miami High School dual enrollment for their English classes, and it was free for children that was on free or reduced lunch programs in those areas. By the time my daughter, 2 years later, graduated from the same district high school, the high school had switched to Northern Pioneer College, community college, and there was a little bit of trouble with her receiving full credit at Arizona State University because of the switch from the community college from GCU, which they didn't offer the same thing as free, but there was a reduced rate that she had to pay, or we had to pay, for her to get that credit. So I support this bill. I think it's a wonderful bill, and thank you very much for running it.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Madam Whip. Just to anybody in the committee have a sponsor. Did the issue of the transferability of the credits come up? Because they all probably transfer to the universities, but how you can use them is a different issue. There are a lot of courses at the community college level that have equivalents at the university level to 300 level courses, but most of the universities don't accept them as a 300 level course, which means you can have a student who takes a whole lot of courses transfer into the university and actually have a bunch of courses that are useless, that can only be used as general electives, or if they've already filled that bucket, are not worthy of anything. So did it discuss having 300 level courses actually transfers 300s as if they took them at the university?
Madam Whip, Representative Kavanaugh, that didn't come up in the discussion on this. I have discussed it previously. Some states have done some innovative things with requiring all dual enrollment ones to be core ones that transfer. We can have that discussion too, but it's a different.
Yeah, Madam Whip, I just bring it up because it's important, because this bill will clearly encourage high school students to take more community college courses, but if they want to use them for a 4-year university degree, you don't want them discovering suddenly that a bunch of the courses they took they can't use at all.
Okay, Mr. Cook, to that point.
Yes, to that point. Thank you, Madam Whip. And so, in speaking from personal experience, what has happened is those courses would then be used for electives sometimes if they don't transfer exactly the same. But what happens is, and I've had this discussion, and because it's happened to us too, is this gets those high school kids, what I call in the pipeline for higher education later, which saves them, and the parents, like our majority leader said, it saves them a lot of money. I mean, when a freshman goes to ASU, just the dorm room alone is $8,000 a year. And so anything we can do to reduce those costs and get them ahead is just what parents need today. And so that's why I support this bill.
Thank you. All right, 2625.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2625 establishes September 25th as Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day and requires the State Board of Education to develop a list of recommended resources relating to civics education that align with the academic standards prescribed by the State Board in Social Studies and establish a process that allows public school to recommend resources for addition to that list. This bill also mandates each public school to dedicate a majority of the school day on Sandra Day O'Connor Civics Celebration Day to civics education. This bill is also on the third read consent calendar. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Bullock?
Madam Whip, members, it's a great bill. It's the bill that the governor mentioned in his State of the State. I don't believe there were many people or anybody sign in for opposition to the bill.
Okay, any questions? All right, thank you. 2682.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2682 requires the State Board of Education to include a requirement that students be taught about the Holocaust and other genocides at least twice between the 7th and 12th grades. This bill is also on the third read consent calendar. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. This is Alma Hernandez bill. Ms. Udall, do you want to speak to that?
I'd love to. Thank you, Madam Whip. This is something that we worked collaboratively on and with the Jewish community locally and some Holocaust memorial groups. Currently in our state standards, the Holocaust is one of 5 ways to teach one of the history strands in high school. I just feel, and a lot of the community feels, that it being one of 5 options to teach is not acceptably strong enough message that this needs to be taught. And so this requires it to be taught at least twice between 7th and 12th grade. They teach world history twice between 7th and 12th grade. So basically each time they teach world history, they need to cover the Holocaust and get that information to our young people.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence?
Madam Whip, I've received a number of emails with regard to this bill. It is important to numbers of members of our community, and we should seriously consider it. It's a yes bill.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. 2684.
Madam Whip members, House Bill 2684 is an emergency measure that directs the Arizona Department of Education to establish a crisis management team to intervene and recommend necessary changes for Peach Springs Unified School District. The crisis management team is tasked with establishing a work plan to evaluate the local circumstances and needs of Peach Springs and is required to determine the factors leading to the district's persistent underperformance. The crisis management team must provide Peach Springs with specific written recommendations to implement that will address any identified issues. The school district must either accept the recommendations or reject them with reason. The crisis management team must submit reports to the governor, Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, and chairpersons of the House and Senate Appropriations and Educations Committee that include specific recommendations for improvement, recommendations for the long-term viability of Peach Springs, and a projected implementation timeline for recommended changes. If it is determined that a long-term sustainability plan is viable, ADE must provide Peach Springs with an implementation timeline and plan, which the district must adopt and may modify. House Bill 2684 is on the third read consent calendar. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Udall, do you want to speak to this?
I would like to. Thanks, Madam Whip. This is to deal with a situation in Peach Springs School District. It has one school there. They've been failing for decades. There is a really bad situation going on between the community, the board, the superintendency. They are almost up in arms with each other over things. There's severe tension, and teachers, although their wages are higher than the state average, they can't keep teachers. They're fleeing the school. Nobody wants to go there because of the tensions that are there between the community and the school. And so we talked about putting them immediately into receivership, but with receivership, you have to have a list of goals that are for how they exit receivership, and we felt like there was a need to really involve the community in that process of setting those goals and really do some root cause analysis to figure out what all the issues are. This is actually it's not in Representative Cobb's district, it's just outside of her district, but she's been working with them for about 5 years and asked us to help step in. So we are cooperating with ADE, and this has been a major undertaking, and it's fairly drastic, not something we would do on a regular basis, but it's damaging to the students there right now.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Madam Whip. I don't know who this question would go to. Probably not the sponsor, because I'm worried about the drafting of this bill. Is the way it's worded where it's specifically towards one district and one district only, is that the appropriate way to draft this legislation?
My thought exactly.
So, Madam Whip, Mr. Allen, it doesn't say the district within the bill.
Okay.
It lists the criteria for which districts it applies to. It only happens to apply to one district.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was my question, because you did mention it specifically to this district, and they'll sue us. So,
Thank you. Mr. Cook, and then Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Whip. I have two questions. The first question is, what is the district's population of enrollment? Is it like 50 students, 100 students?
Staff, Ms. Udall?
I'll let staff if he has it.
Ms. Cobb, do you know?
Madam Whip, I believe it was about 100.
Okay, thank you, Madam Whip. And to the bill sponsor, would you be open to an amendment to this bill specifically for a school district that has under 50 students that is currently going through financial hardships, and they've reached out to me? If the members of that district, it's in my neighboring district, if the two House members that represent that district requested you to also include some language that would have them go in and look at this rural school district that has under 50 students and also have it reviewed.
Madam Whip, Mr. Cook, can you just bring that information to me? I don't know if it can be the same, if it's appropriate to have the same setup or not, but let's review the situation. And see
Okay,
what
Madam Whip, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence?
Asked and answered, Madam Whip, thank
Okay.
you.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Representative Udall, is one of the recommendations to close down, possible recommendations would be to close down the school, to send them to other schools? Is that something that could come out of this?
Madam Whip, Representative Peterson, that's certainly something that has come up as one of the options. I'm gonna let, this is something that Representative Cobb has been working on quite a bit, so I think she's probably a better one to answer some of these questions.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Cobb?
Yeah, Madam Whip, I'm not sure of background. I'm sorry, I had to take a phone call and I walked away. I've been working on this for about 7 years now. This school district is an F school. We've been trying to go back and forth, and finally I held the Department of Education hostage in my office and got them to go out to that school district this year. And when they finally did, they saw exactly what I've been trying to get them to see for the last 7 years. And that is that this school, there is a volatile atmosphere around this whole school. And there's no working with it the way it is. And so what we ended up, they were talking about taking it into receivership. So somebody asked if this should go into receivership. That was the original thing. Then they decided that before they go into receivership, what we want to do is do a crisis team to go into the school and see if there's any kind of, anything we could do to save it at this point. If it doesn't, that's the next step that's probably going to go through. The problem is we've never done this before. And so we need to run legislation to be able to go to these schools that are F schools. This school's been an F school for 15 years. Wow. And no one has gone out there and checked this out. They've had bankruptcies. They've had people, there's been several superintendents that have gone into the school, have left the school in worse shape than they started. They have over $4 million sitting into a bank account right now, and their school is an F school. And it's 100 kids. Now, we have some issues in that whole district, and so they're looking at that. The taxpayers are still on the roll for this right now. It's surrounded by the nation. It's sitting on public land, but it's surrounded by the nation, and the taxpayers are paying for this right now still. We still have a $3 million bond sitting out there.
So Madam Whip, thank you, Representative Cobb, for that info. We do need to do something with these F schools. Perhaps Representative Fillmore could add to his largesse of education bills and help us take care of these F schools. So I appreciate your efforts on this.
Thank you.
Madam
Mr.
Whip,
Fillmore?
Mr. Majority Leader, the problem is not the school, the problem is the community. And I spoke with the representative representing the area in that, and he acknowledged as much. This is on the Native American community, and there are conflicts in governance on that, and it's been a back and forth thing. I totally support the bill. I think that this is something that we've got to do. And then if this fails down the road in a couple of years, I think that we're going to have to do something that is a lot more drastic.
Mr. Blackman?
Yes, Madam Whip. Representative Udall, you mentioned something that this teachers are getting paid above the wage, the state average?
Madam Whip, Representative Blackman, that's correct. They've been paid quite a bit above any of the neighboring districts, yet they can't keep teachers because the atmosphere is so hostile.
Do you have an average of what they're getting paid? Do you know? Do we know what they're getting paid?
Madam Whip, I think it was around 66. Is that correct, Chase?
Madam Whip, Representative Cobb, I'm not sure. I would have to look into that.
I'm pretty sure it was right around 66 was the average.
Pretty high?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Udall, did you want to add something else?
Yes, Madam Whip, and to Representative Peterson, I have a bill for you. Learn about Project Rocket. That's the whole point, to have no more F schools within 5 years, and not by just getting rid of the label, by actually improving them.
Thank you. Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Madam Whip and members. The discussion about the teachers receiving higher than on average pay, I'd like for us to think about two things. It's number one, is the location of these school districts, and that's the one I'm bringing up in Pleasant Valley in Young, Arizona. There is no other choice for these children. The district public school is the only choice. And what happens is they have to provide the same services, have the same teachers as everything else. And we provide stipends for two different areas that we can talk about. Number one is in rural health care, and Madam Chairwoman, you ran a bill that we all supported, is that these rural hospitals that don't have the ability to have these specialists, we provided funds for these rural hospitals to pay these specialists to drive from the Phoenix or Maricopa or Pima County or whatever, out to these rural hospitals to do these procedures because they're not available. They can't afford to hire this, so it's to offer them a stipend for the loss of time to travel there. Another thing we do is with the Department of Corrections in these prisons that are way out, that we provide a 10% stipend for these officers to work at those locations, which is higher. And so when these school districts are located, like by the nation, these people need an incentive to move there and teach in these places. And so that's just the only thing we can do is offer them more money to travel to these far off places in which they don't. That's why we need to grow our teachers that are out there. So I support the bill. It's a great bill.
Thank you. Okay, HCR 20, Mr. Campbell, I'm sorry. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Whip. As to the physical crisis team, I mean, what authority do they really have? They make recommendations. And so if this problem's been going on for 15 years, unless I'm reading something wrong, that's why I'm asking the question. You appoint this physical crisis team, and then what?
So, Madam Whip, Representative Campbell.
Yeah.
They actually have authority to enforce those decisions. If you read through it, they can require the board to take certain actions.
I didn't see that in the bill, but I take your word for it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Committee on Government, 2113.
Good morning, Madam Whip and members. My name is Stephanie Jensen. I'm the analyst for the Government Committee. House Bill 2113 requires ASRS to provide an employer credit against future contributions if more than the correct amount of employer or member contributions is paid. This bill also details how ASRS is to provide returned contributions and who they must go to. Madam Whip, this bill is on the third read consent calendar, and I would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh?
Yes, Madam Whip. Board bill necessary to conform to federal law changes.
Okay, any questions? All right, 2115.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2115 makes numerous changes to statute relating to the Joint Legislative Audit Committee and the Auditor General. This bill authorizes the Auditor General or their representative access to employees in the performance of official duties. Additionally, House Bill 2115 makes knowingly obstructing or misleading the Auditor General a Class 2 misdemeanor. This bill directs JLBC to notify the members of the legislature of the cost of special audits as soon as practicable. And Madam Whip and members, the summary details the rest of the changes in the bill. And this bill is also on the third read consent calendar, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kern?
Same bill as last year. It's a great bill that allows the Auditor General to do her job, and she's doing a great job, and the Auditor General's office is doing a fantastic job. So it passed unanimously out of here, passed unanimously out of the Senate, and go from there.
Okay. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Madam Whip. And I just want to commend the chairman of the Audit Committee for putting this bill up again. The Auditor General is ours. JLBC, the Auditor General, the Ombudsman, these are functions of the legislature. We appropriate money, then we want to know, was it well spent? That's what the audits are. If you want to find out how well we're doing at catching bad guys spending our money, read the audits. Our auditor is very, very good. What we have here is we have the executive branch saying they don't like the oversight that this bill brings, even though this has only very mild changes in it, just streamlines the process and makes it so that we have some things internally and externally so it works better. They don't want that. I've had this vetoed. It's been killed in committee. I keep that veto in my office up on the wall. This is one of those things where this is our auditor. This is what we ask her to do to find out, did they spend the money correctly? I don't know how many times we've all turned around and said, what happened with that? And we turn to the auditor for those answers. So this is an important bill. Let's put it out again, and let's pressure the executive to sign it this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to Representative Kern, can you remind me if in this bill it changes how frequently this JLAC meets?
It doesn't, Madam Chair, Representative Townsend, I don't think it changes how frequently it meets, but I can find that out. by statute, we're supposed to meet every quarter, once every quarter. So it does not change that.
Alan wants to respond.
Okay, it does not. Madam Chair and Representative Kern, last night we learned in our education committee that there's a commission on data operations security. I forget exactly what it was called. Hasn't met since 2011. Probably would have been good to have them up and functioning in light of this most recent data breach. If statute says that a commission or committee needs to be meeting a certain amount of times, ought not we to meet that many times, or should we change it to meet what we ordinarily do? So what I'm saying is, if we're supposed to meet quarterly and we are not, it doesn't look good for us. So either something has to change. Either we meet like we ought to, like this other commission has it been, they need to be meeting, or we change. So what's the plan on that?
Madam Chair and Representative
Kern.
Townsend, so as of January 1st, I became the House Chairman of JLAC, so my intention is to meet and follow statute and meet every year. I don't, I think JLAC has been doing a good job, but I think we could do maybe a little better. And so I promise to you and the members here that we will be meeting every quarter as statute.
And
Okay.
to that point,
Mr. Allen?
I also have suffered through being the chairman. We would not be able to meet quarterly. We would not get a quorum. It takes months. Sometimes it takes a full quarter to find a day when you can get enough to get a quorum for JLAC. There's no way we would ever be able to meet. So it's at the discretion of the chair. That's also in the statute, and that's the way we've been doing it a long time, because no one will come. It's just one of those committees that it's very hard to get scheduled, and it's been that way for a long time. We get a ton of stuff done. It's a great, the Auditor General does a great job, but I've never not been able to take care of that business, and then the JLAC chairs, both House and Senate, are able to meet with the Auditor General at any time to steer issues around that don't need the full committee. And so the once-a-year thing has been a red herring by a senator that I know over on the other side for a long time, who believes that the JLAC committee somehow should be the impeachment committee in the House and Senate of every issue that he finds unlikable. But that is not the nature of audits. The nature of audits is to find out where the money went.
And Madam Chair, just last comment is our first JLAC meeting is Thursday at 3 o'clock, so would love members to come on over and support the JLAC committee.
And where's it going to be? Location?
It's here at, I'm not sure where, that's a good,
Okay. We'll
I
get-
think,
we'll get
I
that
think it's
And
here.
Madam Chair, to that point.
Yeah, we'll get it out.
To that point, I just want to speak in defense of my seatmate in the Senate, and that sometimes we have difference of opinion, and that's okay. And so I thank the current chair and hope that you can whip up your quorum so that we can be in compliance with the quarterly if necessary. Otherwise, I'm looking for it where it says, I'm trusting Mr. Allen that you're right, that it says at the discretion. I hope that's the case. So anyway, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Madam Whip. I've decided to hold my question. I will talk to leadership offline. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. 2221.
Madam Chair and members, Isabella Russian, Assistant Research Analyst for the House Judiciary and Government Committees. Madam Whip and members, common councils of a town are required to publish financial statements in a town newspaper, if any, or in at least 3 public places in the town 10 days before a biennial election. House Bill 2221 would require the Common Council to also post the financial statement on the town's website, if any, at least 10 days before the biennial election. Madam Whip, this bill is on the 3rd read consent calendar. With that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin?
Good bill.
All right, any questions on that good bill? All right. 2350.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2350 repeals the committed youth confinement cost-sharing fee paid by the counties and the related Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections local cost-sharing fund. Any unexpended monies from the fund will be transferred to the State General Fund, appropriated to the Arizona Department of Administration, then dispersed to each county proportionally in fiscal year 2021. This bill is on the 3rd read consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for any questions.
Mr. Toma?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Members, this is a shift it's undoing a cost shift, actually, is the better way of saying this. We've been undoing it for the last couple of years. By way of background, I believe 2 or 3 years ago, we made the change where all the smaller counties were automatically part of the, going back to the base, and this is including the larger 2 counties as well. So it's just making it ongoing. What we've been doing is one time, essentially, for the last couple of years. And Representative Cobb has a lot of background on this. I believe we ran the bill last year. Yeah, so we're doing it again.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right. Health 2051.
Madam Whip and members, Megan Larson, intern for the HHS committee. Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2051, as amended by the Health and Human Services Committee, makes it unprofessional conduct for a healthcare provider to perform or supervise a pelvic examination without obtaining informed consent from the patient. Madam Whip, this bill is on the COW consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Would you like Ms. Bartow to speak on the bill first? Yes. Okay, Ms. Bartow.
Thank you, Madam Whip. We are actually taking it off the consent calendar because we have an amendment that will further clarify and ask by the court to clarify the ability for law enforcement to perform those examinations in certain circumstances when a victim might be, too frankly incapacitated, and yet there's been a sexual assault. So for them to clarify that statute. But basically what the bill does, it's very common sense and kind of amazing that this is occurring. But training physicians often, I think, or at least in some circumstances, are performing examinations, pelvic examinations on women without obtaining informed consent, and we're fixing that to make sure that doesn't happen in Arizona. So that's what the bill does.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Whip. Representative Bartow, on your amendment, it says, is requested by law enforcement and performed pursuant to Section 13-1414. Could you kind of tell me what Section 13-1414 is? I mean, the problem with the consent, is it written consent? Is it express consent? Is it implied consent? I'd like to know more about how you firm this up to get law enforcement's consent for the pelvic examination.
Ms. Bartow, do you want staff? Or
Thank you. Just basically, Madam Whip and Representative Campbell, actually, that is one of the reasons we're clarifying it in an amendment. That's a little bit of a broad reference in law, and so Ledge Council asked to. It was in the wrong area of statute too, and maybe Ingrid or Megan can clarify. But basically, it's a very narrow opportunity. Law enforcement will have a very narrow opportunity to use those. And it's only in the cases where there's an incapacitated victim of a sexual assault. That's the testimony from Rebecca Baker.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Madam Whip and Representative Bartow. I appreciate you bringing this bill forward. When we heard this in committee, I could not believe this was going on, that you go to a teaching hospital and that without your consent, they were going to do procedures on you for teaching purposes that if they looked you straight in the face, most people would say, no, you can't do that. And so the idea that once you're anesthetized, you've somehow submitted yourself to an exam in which you had no intentions of ever having done while doing that procedure was just appalling to me. If you want to help out a school and help teach and that sort of thing, then you should be just asked to donate your time to that purpose. But without consent, I mean, it just seemed appalling to me. So thank you for bringing it forward, and I look forward to the amendment.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, 2132.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2132 specifies that a chiropractic assistant cannot assist a chiropractor in massage therapy unless the assistant is licensed in massage therapy. Madam Whip, this bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Okay, Ms. Bartow?
Madam Whip, I'm available for questions, but basically does this one simple thing.
All right, any questions? Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. Representative Bartow, do you have an example of why this is needed or the concern for this?
Madam Whip, Representative Peterson, no.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Madam Whip, and thank you, Majority Leader, for that. How does this conflict in any way with the bill we passed with accepting licenses from other states that would work here?
Ms. Bartow or staff? Staff.
Madam Whip and Representative Cook, I wouldn't see why that would conflict.
Madam Whip and staff, I want to know that because I wholeheartedly supported the bill and think that we're doing great things here in Arizona by accepting these licenses from other states to make it easier for people to do business. And when this bill seems to be directly targeted to being licensed to do something, and I just want to know if it conflicts with any way of what we have done together in the past session.
Madam Whip and Representative Cook, this bill is just making a clarifying statement that unless a chiropractic assistant, holds a massage therapy license, they cannot assist the chiropractor with any sort of massage therapy.
Madam Whip staff, what is entailed into getting the license for a massage therapy assistant, if those are the words you just used? How many hours are that? What are the fees for that? How do you do that?
Madam Chair, or Madam Whip and Representative Cook, we can send you the requirements that are outlined in statute.
Thank you.
Madam Whip staff.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Madam Whip staff, because what I'm saying is that we are moving towards in Arizona, especially in the healthcare field, of having supervised doctors and people working under those doctors to do certain roles and things under the supervision of a doctor. And I think that I'm just wondering if this conflicts with the way we're moving by saying no, but if the person is working under a licensed chiropractor, supervising this person, and they're the ones ultimately responsible, are we requiring them to do something else? And we go back to the blow drying thing, and that's why I want to know how many hours is needed to do this. Thank you.
So she's going to get the information for everyone. Any other comments, Ms. Bartow?
No, thank
Okay.
you.
2224.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2224 requires psychologists and behavior analysts to apply for a fingerprint clearance card by January 1st of 2021. And beginning March 1st, 2020 through September 1st of 2022, the bill provides an exemption from the licensing requirements as outlined in the bill summary. And the Health and Human Services Committee adopted an amendment that specifies that if the work experience for a behavior analyst was obtained in a state, the licensed behavior analyst at the time of the supervised work, the supervisor must be licensed where the trainee services were provided. And this bill is on the Cal consent calendar, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bartow.
Yes, thank you, Ingrid and Madam Whip. Members, the fingerprint clearance part of the bill was recommended by the Auditor General. And the second part of the bill, it outlines an exemption allowing certain psychology students who were attending certain schools which had closed to obtain licensure. So we're fixing a problem that occurred in Arizona due to some certain schools that closed and making sure that they can work in Arizona.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, 2244.
Madam Whip, members, Ajni Graham, Assistant Analyst for Health and Human Services and Appropriations. Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2244 requires access to seek federal authorization to reimburse the Indian Health Service facilities and tribal facilities to cover the cost of adult dental services. This bill is on the third read consent calendar, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Bartow, would you like to talk to this? Mr. Shope's not here.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Madam Whip. Well, it's basically just allowing them to recoup federal reimbursement for those services.
All right, any questions? All right, 2317.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2317 allows the Arizona Regulatory Board of Physician Assistants to issue a new license to a PA whose license was previously surrendered if the applicant demonstrates that they are completely rehabilitated with respect to the conduct that was the basis of the surrender. And there was an amendment adopted in the Health Committee that made a technical correction. And I'm available for questions.
Ms. Bartow?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Fairly straightforward. We're just expanding the opportunity for those licensees who have previously surrendered their license to get back in the game.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Ms. Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Whip and Representative Barnes. Just a quick question. How long do they have been rehabilitated before they could be eligible?
Thank you. Ingrid, I'm not sure. 2 years?
2 years? Okay.
Excuse me.
All right, thank you. Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, Ingrid, could you kind of break that down in English for us? What are we talking about here? What kind of violations would be reinstatable or non-reinstatable? Could you give us some examples here?
Madam Whip and Representative Campbell, I'd have to check on that, but it's going to be something that would cause, it could be a substance use disorder problem where maybe they need some treatment for a while. And what this bill is doing, currently statute just provides and outlines for when somebody's license gets revoked. And so what they're doing in this bill is clarifying too that if the licensee instead decided to surrender their license rather than having the board revoke it.
And to that point, Ingrid explained it well, but it already allows them to get to practice if their license has been revoked. So we're just doing the same thing for if they have surrendered voluntarily their license. But they have to have gone through treatment and been deemed,
Just
worthy
quickly,
to practice
to that point,
again.
who makes the decision to reinstate the license? Is it the board?
Madam Whip and Representative Campbell, yeah, it would be the Arizona Regulatory Board of Physician Assistants.
All right, okay. All right, moving on to Judiciary, 2233.
Madam Whip, members, I'm Samantha Fagerberg, intern for the Judiciary Committee. House Bill 2233 enables the Supreme Court to create rules to govern signatures on specific court documents. This bill specifically focuses on implementing electronic signatures. This bill is on the third read consent calendar. With that, members, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, members. And Sam did a great job, but this is basically moving us into the direction of the 21st century. More and more things are available online. Not all of them need a wet signature. So this is just saying, under the circumstances where the court has a surety that this is the person, they're going to accept electronic signatures.
Kind of like Iowa.
All right,
Yeah.
any other questions?
Actually, isn't Iowa a very interesting case? These are the same people that want to run our health care.
There you
Okay? So,
Good job.
All right, any other questions? All right, moving on to Military and Veterans Affairs, 2135.
Madam Whip and members, my name is Valerie Garcia. I'm the intern for the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. House Bill 2135 adds data to be included in the annual report on veteran suicides. It requires the annual report to include a utilization and encounter data for a nonprofit veteran service organization that provides services related to reducing suicides among Arizona's military and veteran populations. And additionally, it allows data that ADVS is required to provide DHS to include national, state, and local sources as available. And Madam Whip, House Bill 2135 is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence?
It's a good explanation. Originally, we had just thought of those items that were common to most or all suicides. We've added any number of requisites now with the Department of Health Services adding to it. So it's a good explanation. It's a good bill.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, 2288.
Madam Whip and members, Jason Theodore, Research Analyst for the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. House Bill 2288 requires a state agency to provide a fee waiver to any active duty service member and their spouse or any veteran applying for an initial occupational license. House Bill 2288 is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Osborne?
Thank you, Jason. That was, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
That was a good explanation, and it's a good bill. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Representative Osborne, do we know what the cost is for that's going to be waived here? Is there going to be an increase in fees for others, or do they have an excess of fees that they've collected, licensing fees, or how are they? If you could kind of speak to how the agencies are handling the funding for this.
Yes, I was given information that the OSPD fiscal memo could show that is about $1 million across all boards. And within the balances that these boards have, the impact on any one board would be very, very minimal.
Mr. Peterson, any other question?
No,
okay. Thank you. 2218, Natural Resources, Energy, and Water.
Madam Whip and members, my name is Mackenzie Nensel. I am the research intern for the Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee, as well as the Land and Agriculture Committee. Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2218 broadens the mining experience requirements for the state mine inspector. The Committee on Natural Resources, Energy, and Water adopted an amendment that requires the inspector candidate be knowledgeable of state and federal regulations involving the health and safety of mining employees. Madam Whip and members, with that, I am available for any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin?
Yes, it increases and identifies actual experience in mines for the mine inspector. That's really important. I anticipate a Democrat amendment on this, so I appreciate all of you hanging in there with me as written. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Fillmore?
Madam Whip, I'm just wondering that if we're going to, this is an elected position, if we can put some of the same restrictions on members of the legislature.
Well, to that point.
Ms. Griffin, you want to do that? Mr. Kern, sorry.
Thank you. You know, I know you said that in jest, but my concern when the bill came through, when I was, no, maybe not in jest, but anyway, my concern was it is an elected position, and I was kind of concerned about putting qualifications on an elected position would kind of stifle people from jumping into a state mine inspector and kind of maybe you know, not opening up the field. So we're narrowing the field, and I asked some of the rules attorneys on that, and we kind of discussed that. But that was a concern of mine about putting qualifications on an elected position. I think doesn't help the voting public. So just my thought. I support the bill, and I'll be voting yes.
Madam Whip, to
Yes,
that
sir.
point.
Mr. Fincham?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Members, when the mining inspector position was first established, mining was very different than it is today. It is much more complicated than it was back in the days of just simple hard rock mining. And I think it's wholly appropriate. I would agree with Representative Griffin that it's wholly appropriate to try to qualify somebody who is going to be overseeing a highly technical inspection process to at least have the engineering expertise and the education. This isn't just like any elected office. This is probably one of the most technical that we have to vote on. So I support the bill.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin, Mr. Kern?
Well, to that point, and I get that, and that's kind of why, but as you go through the elected process and you're meeting constituents, you know, they should be asking those questions. And, you know, when I cast my vote for someone, I'm going to ask those questions. Are you qualified? And therefore, yay or nay on my personal vote. So, you know, I did consider all that. And I support the bill. So I'll
All right,
talk.
thank you. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Kavanaugh?
Madam Whip, what is the effective date of this?
Staff? My understanding is it would take place at the next election, state mine inspector election. Is that correct?
Madam Whip, members,
I would have to check on that, and I can get that information to you as soon as possible.
And Madam Whip, and I guess that's kind of a little concern in the back of my mind. I'd be more comfortable if this was the election after, since people could already be lining up for candidates, and somebody might say, hey, you're trying to box out somebody who's running against
I don't think
me.
it's this year, is it, Ms. Griffin?
I don't
Isn't it
think
2
it's this
years? They
year.
have like
Yeah.
2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, but Madam Whip, I mean, somebody could be already planning to run, so.
Well, 2 years'
And-
notice.
I understand. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to 2309.
Madam Whip and members, Paul Berglund, Research Analyst for the Committee on Natural Resources, Energy and Water, and Land and Agriculture. House Bill 2309 extends the exemptions for irrigation water duties, conservation requirements, and groundwater withdrawals for the Buckeye waterlogged area through December 31st, 2034. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Madam Whip, members, thank you, Paul, for that explanation. It's a simple bill. The Department of Water Resources did their report in December, and they recommended extending this waterlogged area for another 10 years, so it goes from 2024 to 2034.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
Yes, I'm a little puzzled by, there's a couple things. One of them has to do with, there's also an exemption that this will be declared as surface water up until, I think it's 2034 also, right? The withdrawals would not be considered groundwater. And I'm just wondering why don't we want conservation? And why are we eliminating that? And why are we kind of calling groundwater surface water?
Madam Whip, Representative Campbell, there's a technical reason behind that, and I can look into that and send you an explanation. But to your overall question, the Buckeye waterlogged area has unique hydrologic conditions. If groundwater pumping is not permitted, the soil will become waterlogged, and agricultural production will cease, essentially. That's the nutshell of what the study does. The statute was established in 1988 for this area, and these exemptions were put in place then and have been continued at every point since then. The DWR has to do a periodic study of this area and consult with stakeholders when making a recommendation whether to extend all these exemptions. The provision you're mentioning is one of those provisions that was originally in place.
I noticed that the bill passed unanimously out of the committee almost with 12, with one absent. What, during the committee hearing, was there any adverse information provided against this proposed bill?
Ms. Griffin, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, all this does is extend what has already been happening over the years, and the Department of Water Resources is fully behind this bill.
Mr. Campbell, any more? You're good?
Well, that's fine. Well, thank you.
Mr. Dunn?
Madam Whip, Mr. Representative Campbell, those are good questions. So they are doing conservation, like Paul said, it's a unique hydrology, and the surface water is because once you pump it, it's going into the Gila River, and it's going down, and now Palo Verde and Gila Bend are using that water in their irrigation districts, and they have been since 1988. So it's something that makes that area viable, and if they don't do it, then the water's going to come up and it'll salt out, and they won't build a farm. So we're not wasting the water. Water's getting used 3 different times as it goes down the district.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, 2452.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2452 requires an underground storage tank system to comply with certain federal performance standards for underground storage tanks that are in effect as of January 1st, 2020. With that, I'd be happy, and this bill is on the third read consent calendar like the previous bill I presented on. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin?
It just conforms with the federal regulations.
All right, any questions? 2455.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2455 makes several changes to the Voluntary Vehicle Repair and Retrofit Program and the Vehicle Emissions Inspection Program. To be brief, the major changes are as follows. For the Vehicle Repair and Retrofit Program, it shifts the administration of that program from DEQ instead of to counties. It also removes the requirement that a vehicle needs to be over 12 years old in order to participate in this program, and it also lowers the customer co-payment. For the Vehicle Emissions Inspection Program, it allows ADEQ to research all vehicle emissions and air pollutants and it also allows ADEQ to hire consultants to analyze the costs and benefits of measures to reduce these emissions.
Mr.
This bill
Tillman, are
is-
you stealing my member?
Madam Whip and members, this bill's on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Griffin, did you want to speak to this?
No, Paul did an excellent job.
All right,
Madam Whip,
yes, Mr. Lawrence.
just out of curiosity, does it make it easier or more difficult to get this approval?
Easier. In fact, it does address cars that are
12 years.
12 years or younger, that are not meeting the criteria, and takes those into consideration. But it's a cleanup bill and takes care of many things.
Thank you, Madam Whip.
Thank you. All right, 2456.
Cleanup bill.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2456 repeals the termination dates for the Volunteer Remediation Program, the Total Maximum Daily Load Program, and the Monitoring Assistance Program. An amendment that was adopted by the Committee of Natural Resources, Energy, and Water also repealed the termination dates for the Water Quality Appeals Board, the Vehicle Emissions Inspection Program, and the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. This bill is on the Cal consent calendar. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Griffin?
Yes, it puts many of these programs under the same sunset for ADEQ rather than different ones. Like the Department of Water Resources have many programs, and they're all addressed at the same time, so it makes it easier.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, 2497.
Madam Whip, members, by way of background, statute requires counties with a certain population to create a voluntary lawn and garden equipment retirement program. Someone can receive a voucher for agreeing to retire their lawn and garden equipment, and they have to use that voucher to acquire a product that produces lower emissions. This bill makes two changes to that program. First, it increases the voucher amount for commercial lawnmowers that are retired from $200 to at least $200. And secondly, it allows recipients who receive a residential lawnmower voucher to use that on a manually operated real lawnmower. And this is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Members, this is simple. It's tweaking that, like Paul said, so that you can actually use a real lawnmower. So this is very green. The millennials now, they really want to go green, and they're going to buy a real lawnmower. So but right now they can't.
The push mower bill.
And it's not using general fund.
There you go.
Hey, I've used a push mower in my boonies, you guys. They
No,
work.
not a horse.
Great workout.
He has a picture of it. Look at it.
A real lawnmower, not a real lawnmower.
Madam Whip,
Mine was
Madam
paper.
Whip, I want to commend Paul on his artistic work. During the hearing, he was able to clearly define the difference between gas-powered push mowers and manual push mowers.
Thank you.
Madam Whip.
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question. I don't see a catcher on that, and I don't think I could
Have to go rake it.
You open to an amendment?
All right, 2593.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2593 repeals the Mining Advisory Council. This bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I am available for any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin?
This commission hasn't met in years. There's other organizations that promote mining and address issues on mining, and this one is not needed, so we're asking that it be repealed.
All right, any questions?
Less government.
All right, 2617.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2617 makes a technical change to the Temporary Irrigation Efficiency Projects Fund. Just as by way of background, the legislature created this fund last year as part of the drought contingency plan, and it established certain criteria for this fund, namely that a district has to lawfully irrigate at least 9,000 acres, and that district that did not deliver water other than CAP water in 2017. This bill changes that requirement so that a district that did not deliver water other than CAP water in 2017, that only applies to districts that are located in the Phoenix AMA area. The net effect of this change is to allow one additional irrigation district to participate in this fund. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Griffin?
Yeah, it just includes the San Carlos Irrigation District.
Any questions? 2686.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2686 prohibits a municipality or county from denying a building permit based on the utility provider proposed to serve that county. It also prohibits a municipality or county from establishing any restrictions on issuing a building permit based on the utility provider that will serve that project. This bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin, you want to speak to this?
Yes, this is all of the above types of power. There's a move in California that is prohibiting natural gas to be used, and so this prohibits the prohibition of any of all the above.
Thank you. Any questions?
So, Madam Whip, just real quick on this. Members, this is going to be a party line vote. This is opposed by people who believe in the Green New Deal and, no power, no utilities. So this is a really important bill, and we need to make sure if there's any members who have concerns, please see the sponsor or the whip or myself on this.
Thank you. Moving on to Regulatory Affairs, 2184.
Madam Whip, members, my name is Lauren Breen, research intern for the Regulatory Affairs Committee. House Bill 2184 requires a regulating entity to add a printed statement to all license and certificate applications, websites, and communications with a potential licensee. The statement must inform the applicant that they will be granted an occupational or professional license or certificate if they have been licensed or certified in another state for at least 1 year in the same discipline at the same practice level and meet all necessary conditions. This bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Whip. This is a very simple bill. Really shouldn't have any opposition. It's a disclosure to what was passed last session in universal licensing to make sure people are aware it's available to them. I will have a floor amendment. I thought Mr. Shaw brought up a good concern about the way the language was written, so I will have a floor amendment to clarify something, and he'll probably offer that, and I'll be in support of that. If there's any questions on this, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, 2249.
Madam Whip, members, as amended by the Regulatory Affairs Committee, House Bill 2249 prohibits a funeral director and a funeral establishment owner who has control of a decedent's remains from qualifying as a creditor and seeking appointment as a personal representative of the decedent. The bill is on the COW consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Ms. Bullock?
Madam Whip, thank you to the staff. I think she did a great job creating a synopsis of what the bill does. The current law allows the funeral homeowners to act as both executors and creditors of your estate, so we're just closing that loophole with this bill.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, 2312.
Madam Whip, members, John Rudolph, House Research Analyst for the Regulatory Affairs Committee. House Bill 2312 makes various changes to statute relating to certain financial enterprises, including the bill removes the requirement for certain financial enterprises to submit a terminated, revoked, or surrendered license to the Department of Financial Institutions and removes the requirement to conspicuously or prominently display the license. Finally, the bill requires a mortgage broker, a mortgage banker, or a consumer lender that employs a loan originator to submit a sponsorship request through a nationwide multi-state licensing system that provides written notice that the employer has hired the loan originator. The bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Grantham?
Yeah, it's a good regulatory reform package bill. One of the things to understand with the license hanging is this saves departments vast amounts of resources and money, especially in this realm, by not having to print and mail a black and white printed license on a plain sheet of paper. Something that, quite honestly, anybody can duplicate, replicate, fraudulently create, and it drives people towards the online source of these licenses, which is the only accurate way to check the good standing or not good standing of one of these institutions. So it's just kind of a good, like I said, regulatory reform bill that kind of keeps things moving with the times, saves people money, including the state of Arizona, and streamlines the process.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, moving on to 2351.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2351 authorizes a person who is not a real estate broker but who works for a broker to collect rent for the use of real estate as part of their clerical duties. This bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Toma?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Members, it's a good bill. It just allows a front office employee or office manager to accept rent when someone walks in and wants to pay, even if there isn't a licensed realtor there to accept the payment. Strictly speaking, there will probably be a floor amendment of some kind to just to kind of clarify some parts of the bill, and also to our friends on the left have asked that there be a requirement that at least a receipt be offered when someone comes in to pay rent, which makes sense. Of course, you'd want to offer them a receipt. Obviously, you want to be concerned about what the potential ramifications of that are in future audits, so we want to be careful about what that language actually looks like, but overall, a good bill.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Whip, just to clarify, Mr. Toma, is this simply when there's a property management company taking rents? This would just apply to property management situations?
Madam Whip, Representative Houston, yes, most of the time that'll be the case. There are a couple of situations where, and we're kind of vetting out not the legalities, but the way this works in the real world, where sometimes you have brokerages that list the property for lease. They don't actually property manage.
Right.
When someone will come in and pay, say, a fee to check credit or something like that, same sort of idea there, but it's related to an actual lease in that particular situation.
Okay.
So that would be the only time that I can figure that wouldn't be a property management relationship specifically.
Okay, any other questions? All right, 2398.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2398 exempts persons who provide a website or electronic platform for insurers and persons that process payments or charges for insurance premiums from the requirement to obtain a license as an insurance producer. The bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, 2403.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2403 stipulates that in the event of a service contract cancellation, the administrative expenses cannot exceed $75 or 10% of the purchase price of the service contract, whichever is less, and any administrative expenses assessed may not exceed the amount of the refund due to the service contract holder. Finally, the bill states that a contract must disclose whether the contract covers or excludes pre-existing conditions. The bill is on the third read consent calendar, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Grantham?
Really nothing. It's a little bit of a language cleanup. There's some confusion right now with regards to these refunds and what happens when somebody cancels a service contract. In state law, the language is not clear, and this should help clear that up. Quite honestly, protecting the consumer and also protecting the folks a little bit who issue these things and then have them canceled the next day. We really had no opposition, John, correct, in committee. Pretty straightforward, quite boring actually, but good bill. I always run good bills.
Good boring bill.
Thank you, Mr. Grantham, for running good bills.
You're welcome.
All right, 2063, transportation.
Madam Whip and members, my name is Valerie Garcia, and I'm the intern for the Transportation Committee. House Bill 2063 establishes the Education and Community Enrichment Play-In Fund. The bill requires ADOT to allocate the monies deposited in the fund on an annual basis to an Arizona charitable organization that meets outline requirements, including having a mission to promote education through scholarships and education programming, and to promote youth activities, sports, and culture enrichment in the community. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Madam Whip. explained well. This would be for groups like the Scottsdale Charros who have for decades been involved in fundraising for charities.
All right, any questions? 2064.
Madam Whip and members, House Bill 2064 establishes the rodeo special plate and fund. The bill requires ADOT to allocate the monies deposited in the fund on an annual basis to an Arizona museum that meets specified criteria that includes boasting rodeo artifacts going back to at least 1953, including saddles ridden by famous rodeo champions. And Madam Whip, House Bill 2064 is on the third read consent calendar, and with that I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Also charitable this time for the rodeo museum in Old Town Scottsdale, which is Scottsdale only. It's Scottsdale Museum because it's located in Scottsdale, but it celebrates rodeo all over the state, including on the Native American reservations.
Thank you. Mr. Grantham?
Madam Whip, I'd just like to know how many license plates we're up to now in the state.
Well, they told us yesterday, and didn't they tell us yesterday?
To the point, I believe we're only capped at the total number of registered vehicles in the state.
Okay, good.
There is a cap.
All right, Ways and Means, 2058.
Madam Whip, members, my name is Blake Ephardt, Research Intern for the Ways and Means Committee. House Bill 2058 allows a county treasurer to waive interest or penalties that may have accrued over a one-year period after a mortgage or deed of trust has been satisfied or otherwise released on a property. This is limited to one waiver per property for a taxpayer. House Bill 2058 is on the third read consent calendar. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Madam Whip. This is the request of the Maricopa County Treasurer's Office. They want to be able to waive these fees, and there's usually small amounts, and it usually occurs when somebody has paid off their mortgage, is no longer paying these taxes through their mortgage. They don't realize that they're in arrears, so they just don't want to ding people for small amounts.
Thank you. Any questions? A little background noise there. 2099.
Madam Whip, members, as amended by the Ways and Means Committee, House Bill 2099 dictates that a mobile home without an affidavit of fixture that is also the owner's primary residence must be 1 year delinquent in taxes and subsequently will have a 6-month redemption period prior to any collection and enforcement of the property for unpaid taxes. And House Bill 2099 is on the Cal consent calendar. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin.
This is in response to the issue that came up last year where a veteran did not pay his property taxes, and within 30 days they can sell that and be evicted from their property. So this is an attempt to extend that 30-day period to a year and 6 months redemption period. It's not as long as real estate if you own the land and the modular. But it does give time for the individual to address any delinquency and not be thrown out on the street.
Any questions? All right, 2293.
Madam Whip, members, Vince Perez, Ways and Means Analyst. HB 2293. Hi there. Adds storage equipment as qualifying equipment for a renewable energy incentive district and provides a deduction from state and municipal transaction privilege tax for machinery and equipment used directly for storage energy for later electrical use. The bill also defines electric utility scale, energy storage, and machinery and equipment used directly. The bill is on the third read consent calendar, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Madam Whip, members, this is the next generation of solar and renewable energy. We need to have the storage equipment as part of the system when you don't pay TPT on it. This is a rerun of the bill that we had last year under Ms. Cobb's name. Had a supermajority vote here, supermajority vote in the Senate, but then it was vetoed. There was the governor, the executive office had determined that there was not the fiscal note that they had, and what was we never negotiated the budget, so they said they vetoed it, but bring it back. So we're back here again.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Madam Whip. Mr. Dunn, what is the governor's position, do we know, on this bill here currently then?
I think you just said to bring it back.
I don't think he's officially said it Madam Whip, I don't think he's officially said a position, but in our negotiations, he said bring it back and we'll negotiate in budget. It's like a $1 million fiscal note, so he's been very favorable of it.
Okay, thank you.
2354.
Madam Whip, members, as amended by the Ways and Means Committee, House Bill 2354 states the due date for a taxpayer filing a corporate, partnership, or exempt organization income tax return that has been granted an extension will be 7 months after the initial due date. House Bill 2354 is on the Cal consent calendar, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Toma.
Thank you, Madam Whip. Another good bill. It is just giving taxpayers another month to file their state taxes so that they are not due at the same time as the federal, which ends up being a burden for them. There's no fiscal impact. The estimated payments are still due when they normally are. This just gives them a little bit of an extra time.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, 2355.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2355 increases the 25% of allowed charitable deductions in accordance with changes in the Metropolitan Phoenix Consumer Price Index. This bill is also on the third read consent calendar. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Toma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill and the bill right after it are very closely related. This, if the members remembered last year, we had the tax conformity wayfare bill, and part of that was to allow a 25% deduction of all charitable donations, even for those that take the standard deduction and don't itemize. So this would basically inflate that percentage number every year by the amount of inflation for that particular year, by the percentage of inflation that year. So it would increase in perpetuity until it gets to 100%.
Thank you. Any questions? 2356.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2356 increases from 25% to 50% the total amount of charitable deductions that may be applied to an individual income tax standard deduction. This bill is also on the third read consent calendar. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Do you want to say any more on this? Okay. Any questions?
Pretty straightforward.
All right, 2358.
Madam Whip, members, House Bill 2358 indexes the allowed tax credit for dependents in accordance with the Metropolitan Phoenix Consumer Price Index. This bill is also on the third read consent calendar. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Toma.
Thank you, Madam Whip. Continuing with the inflation adjustment theme, by way of full disclosure, I was actually personally under the impression that we actually had adjusted this dependent tax credit in the bill last year for inflation, but we hadn't. And so there is a fiscal cost to this. However, I think it's something that we should do, and so that's what it does.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Yes. Madam Whip.
Mr. Fincham.
Thank you, Madam Whip. Mr. Toma, I can't help but notice that Powers, Hanley, Epstein, Cano, and Sierra voted no on this. Is it the typical argument that no tax credits, or was there some other nuance that went along with this?
Madam Whip, Representative Fincham, the nuance on the discussion on all of these bills actually seemed to be more about government losing out on the money that they could spend if we took it. I mean, that was essentially, somebody correct me, that was there, but that was essentially what the discussion kept going back to. There was some discussion in committee and disagreement. I made the point, I think, multiple times that this is not government's money, this is the people's money, and government simply will take slightly less of the people's money. But I think they start from the position that this is government's money, that they shouldn't be given up. So, because we could do all kinds of good things with it if we had it as government, and we could spend it on other things. There was a lot of discussion, or attempted discussion, on how we would appropriate this money, which of course was not the purpose of Ways and Means.
Right.
That's a purpose of appropriations later. But that's kind of how the discussion went.
Nice to know they're dependable.
Thank you, Mr. Grantham.
I just, Madam Whip, just going to second what Mr. Thomas said. Since I'm in there, it is all about how much we're taking from government. That's the opposition. How dare we?
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah,
all right.
I was
Carroll?
worried for a second if they didn't believe in inflation or not, but I guess that's not the point here.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you.